Okay, well, in this video, Sally and I are going to talk about what it's like being a pastor's wife, and specifically talking about expectations in kind of a varied form. So hopefully, if you are a team of pastors or a wife out there you guys are planting a church or just been hired, or you've been doing this for many, many years, you're just kind of curious to hear how other women have processed through or are trying to figure out what it means to be a pastor's wife. Hopefully this video will be helpful for you. So, Sally, I thought it might be interesting for you because you've got a pretty cool vantage point here.
Yeah.
That you spent many years just being involved in church and then ended up marrying a pastor later. And so now you've been on both sides.
Yes.
So why don't you just start by talking about what some of your expectations were going into...
Great. I think we all have expectations in life, and I certainly had them of different women in ministry that I've encountered, and particularly pastors' wives. And I'm kind of on the other side now, and maybe more mature too. That perhaps has something to do with it. But we have expectations, and my expectation many times was that I would have this deep connection with an individual, that they would be available to me on the spot. I'd encounter them at church or perhaps in another venue outside of church, and we would have this immediate connection. I was often involved in the churches I was a part of, and I knew them, so certainly they should know me. And it wasn't always the case. And regrettably, I think I missed out on maybe a richer friendship, or I don't know, just I came away empty at times, and that wasn't always fair to have that expectation. And I've looked at it, reflected back on it, wondered how much of it was that individual needed to have a boundary, and it comes with the job. They can't be available to anyone and everyone, and particularly outside of church, at an outside venue. Maybe they're an introvert. I'm an extrovert. And I feel at times I can really just connect with anybody. And I've learned that I can't. I've seen that I can't, and sometimes I would take that personally, like, had I offended that person in some context?
Why aren't they choosing to spend time with me?
Yes, had I done something wrong in children's ministry when I was working there? Did they not like me? And
it might have had nothing to do with you and everything to do with their personality.
Their personality and my personality. And maybe they also, again, being in a role that I had no idea what it entailed, that they just needed to have a boundary at all times. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a healthy, necessary thing. So my advice would be, as someone going into ministry, to know that boundaries are good, they're appropriate, they're healthy, they should be there. But know that people will have an expectation of you, and you'll just need to deal with that, probably.
I think for our story, my husband and I planted a church, and we were pretty young, and so I feel like I've kind of grown up with the church, that as the church grew, we were getting older. Our kids started as babies when the church was planted, and so we've kind of grown with the church. So in the beginning, I only had what I had to offer because I was a young mom. But as the kids have grown, as the church has grown, now my expectation of myself and my involvement has changed because I have the margin, I have the time to do it. Whereas some people are going to say, I don't have the time or the margin, and the boundaries have to be a little firmer. So Sally, I think that's good for you to talk about that in terms of expectations, to think about not only from the other person's point of view, if you feel like if you have an expectation that a pastor's wife should be available to you 24/7, I don't think that's realistic. But it might also be nothing about that person doesn't want to have a relationship, they just don't have the time or the personality that feeds on that as much as maybe an extroverted personality might. So how has that changed as a pastor's wife now, Sally, for you? As far as the expectations you have of yourself in the role?
Well, in my role currently, we are at different campuses every week. So it's very suited for my personality and role because I do get to engage really in the moment with people. And I think that's helpful to the support role I play for my husband, that I can be there for him to really get drawn into conversations that maybe, we don't see these people but every few weeks.
Right.
So it's really, my personality helps in that, and I'm available, I'm outgoing, and so I think it really helps. If I were in the same place every week, I think that it could be a challenge. I would need to have a different boundary.
Yeah, right.
I'd have to have a different preparation and expectation, emotional energy for every Sunday, because my role would be bigger and more involved.
Right.
And I think that's important to remember, again, as a pastor's wife and as the person connecting with that pastor's wife. I am, on Sunday mornings, that's why I'm there. I am there to connect, to be relational, to find out what's going on in people's lives, to direct them, perhaps, to someone who can invest more in them, get them pointed to a small group, get them pointed to children's ministry. Maybe they're frustrated with something. So I've got that opportunity. If, however, I was what we'd call maybe more traditional pastor's wife, where I have children's ministry, women's ministry,
so you're kind of overseeing
all of that, again, I have to have that boundary. I have to communicate that, and hopefully do it in a way that it can be a challenge, I'm sure, to make that connection. But say something else is on my plate right now.
Right. So how have you and your husband talked about expectations then as a couple, or has he had expectations of you? Have you been surprised by any of that?
We communicate really well, which is a beautiful thing, a wonderful thing. And I think he sees my role as there to support him. But I also think he is concerned at times that, because I do work full-time outside of ministry as well, I'm not employed by the church, but I'm employed by the church to be there for him. And so I think sometimes he thinks that maybe I don't want to be a part of something, that I don't have the time for it, that he doesn't want to expect me to be there because
you need downtime or whatever.
I need downtime or whatever. So, and we've had, not misunderstandings in a bad way, but just something that he's wanted to be a part of, and I'm going to be going to do this, and I am kind of surprised when I haven't been informed or given, hey, I'm doing.
Do you want to do this? Should we do this?
Should we do this? This is fit, and so it's all about communicating what those expectations are. And then if it works, because I want to be there to help him in ministry, to support him, and it falls, I'm going to strive to do that always. But if it's not something that works in my schedule, then I have to communicate to him. So
that's the key, right? The key is communicating.
It is.
Because I think no matter what stage you're in, it's going to change. Yeah. Like it's going to change.
The seasons change.
Yes.
They do
and so
change.
in my relationship and in ministry, my husband and I, we have to check in with each other a lot and be like, now what are you expecting of me right now or in this season? Or this is what you can expect of me.
Right.
Because I need to be home with the kids, or there's just things going on. So I think a great tip that comes out of this conversation is to communicate constantly about how you're doing, what your expectations might be in case you're missing one another, or your husband's thinking, I didn't expect that of you, and you're killing yourself over it.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't want to expect something of you, and you're like, I would have loved to have been a part of that.
Right. And you want to be involved in the ministry. It's an exciting place to be. Not just with your spouse, but with the other team members that are a part of it. And so you want to be, you'd like to do it all.
Yep.
And that's just an important thing to know, that that's not always realistic.
Right.
And so looking at that calendar, maybe on Sunday evenings, and saying, hey, what have we got going? And knowing that it flexes and changes, and don't expect of yourself that you can do it all.
Right.
And that you have to do it all. Because then the joy will be
right.
a little bit robbed.
Right. Yeah, you'll be way better in ministry if you have the right boundaries, you're clear on your expectations. So I think that's a great thing, just to kind of conclude this video on expectations. Find out what your own expectations are, like Sally, for you to share some of the things you expected from a pastor's wife when you were in the church, now being on the other side of it, realizing some of that. With your spouse, it's going to be different for every couple, and that's okay. It's okay that, for you, you're working outside of the church and a full-time job. That's different than myself, who works full-time in the church. Right. So that there's different expectations there. But communicate with your spouse and decide together what those expectations should be, and it's fluid and can change over time, and let it be something that's a positive experience, so you're not killing yourself and then you're no good to anyone. You're not good to your kids, to your husband, you're not good to even the ministry. So hopefully this was helpful to you, this conversation. Use those questions and talk about it, and we'll see you in the next video.